Steam Racers is the Mach Rides launched coaster at Wuxi Sunac Land. It is one of 9 of this exact layout worldwide, which is highly impressive. But is it actually worth all of the mass cloning? Find out in this review. In 2009, Blue Fire Mega Coaster at Europa Park opened. It was Mach Ride's first thrill coaster, featuring a launch, 4 inversions, and several airtime moments. Europa Park is actually owned by the Mach family, which allowed them to showcase their prototype without any competition from more established manufacturers. It was a success, and Mach have since gone on to do bigger and better things. However, it seems a lot of parks liked the original layout, and 9 more have been built in the following years. 2 went to Russia, 1 to the UAE, 1 to South Korea, 1 that had a modified swing launch to Australia, and 4 went to China. One of those is the subject of today's video. Steam Racers is in a part of the park which is themed to steampunk. You enter through an industrial-looking building with pipes and steam boilers. Otherwise, there isn't all that much theming on or around the coaster, but that's okay because the layout is strong on its own. The queue is a long, straight path that goes down the entire length of the ride. This means the ride entrance is on the complete opposite side of the station, which admittedly made it a little bit confusing to locate the first time. Speaking of which, on both my visits, Steam Racers was a complete walk-on. In fact, they were waiting 10 to 15 minutes between cycles in an effort to fill the train. Even when there was a large school group during my second visit, I was never in line at the same time as the students, although if you do find yourself getting in line behind a bunch of students from a school group, you can ask for priority and skip the entire queue. That is certainly a good thing, as I've only ever seen Steam Racers on one train. That could of course change when it sees higher crowds, but even then the dispatches were very slow and they were not in a hurry doing the restraint checks. Speaking of which, Steam Racers restraints consist of a seatbelt and overhead lap bar. I think these are extremely comfortable and freeing as they do not restrict the upper body movements on all the airtime moments. Steam Racers begins with some slow turns out of the station with a brief dark ride section. Then you come to a stop on the launch track. After a couple of seconds, the launch engages and you blast forwards. Coaster enthusiasts often like to make fun of Mach rides for the weak launches they make, and to be fair, some of them are quite weak. But the Blue Fire clones actually pack a pretty decent punch on the launch. Although far from the most powerful out there, it is still quite enjoyable. Then you pull up into an oddly shaped turn. You slowly crawl over the high point, and yet the turn is still banked 90 degrees. As such, you get some weird lateral hang time here. That is followed by a vertical loop. You get some decent positive G's going into it, and at the top, you have some great hang time. The exit has some more positive G's. After that, you go through a snappy transition. This is significantly better on the left side as you get some good whip, while the right side only gets a weak burst of floater airtime. That leads into a very forceful turn. Then you ascend into the mid-course brake run. In front, this gives a very strong ejector pop and laterals simultaneously. In the back, you will still get some floater airtime and slightly weaker laterals. At this point, you barrel through the mid-course brake run without slowing down one bit. The following drop is the inverse of the prior ascent. It has good ejector airtime and laterals in the back, while the front gets floater airtime and slightly weaker laterals. That is followed by a twisted horseshoe roll, which basically consists of a corkscrew that transitions into a low-to-the-ground turn, which transitions into another corkscrew which rotates in the opposite direction. The 2 corkscrews give great whip and hang time, and the turn in the middle also has some decent positive G's. Then you go into an airtime hill which threads the vertical loop earlier on the ride. It gives strong sustained floater airtime. After that, you coast into a relatively high turn that doesn't have that much force. This sets you up for the epic finale, the Blue Fire roll. This is a high-speed barrel roll that violently tosses you out of your seat due to your heartline actually being thrown down in the inversion. This produces some inverted ejector airtime. You also get crazy laterals as you are rapidly whipped around the rotation. This is one of my favorite inversions I have ever experienced. Then you go around one last mildly forceful turn before hitting the brakes and returning to the station, ending the 1,056 meter or 3,465 foot long coaster. With all of that said, what is my favorite seat on Steam Racers? Well, it is a bit hard to say as the forces don't really change much throughout the train. Although the front does have a better sense of speed, so I guess I will go with that as my preferred row, but you really can't go wrong with any row on this coaster. Although I have not ridden any other Blue Fire clones at this point, I don't really see why it would be any different for the others. That is, of course, unless the others have a harsher mid-course trim, in which case I think the difference between the ends of the train will get larger because the following drop will not be as good in the back due to the reduction in speed. I also slightly prefer the left side specifically for that snappy transition following the vertical loop at the beginning of the ride. Like I said earlier, the left has more whip than the right on that part. Otherwise, there is not that much difference between the two sides, meaning you do not need to worry too much about which side you get. Overall, Steam Racers is a very solid launched coaster. I love the variety this ride offers, as it has a good mix of forces that range from lateral forces to positive Gs to airtime to hangtime. Pacing is also one of this ride's strengths as you briskly go from one element to the next. Every element on this ride has something to offer, and of course you've got that one true standout moment in the legendary Blue Fire roll. And unlike many other launched coasters from Mach, this launch is actually not forceless. So what is my rating for Steam Racers? I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. Even though it has 9 other clones around the world, I don't mind because it is a genuinely enjoyable coaster. I am also very happy that on this installation specifically, the mid-course brake run does not trim the train whatsoever, which absolutely helps with the pacing and forces during the second half. The coaster is also perfectly comfortable, which is a result of the smoothness and good restraints. As such, I am very much looking forward to trying out more of these in the future. So what are your thoughts on Steam Racers or all the Blue Fire clones in general? Have you been on one? Do you enjoy them? Or are you starting to get sick and tired of exact copies of it seemingly appearing wherever you go? I would love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this coaster review, and I would be extremely grateful if you gave it a like and subscribed, as more videos will be coming soon on the channel. Thanks for watching.